if you look at the industry as a whole, obviously they're paring down when it comes to news stations, but they're expected to do more and more and more. Holding people accountable for government locally is important.
Sure.
So hard for people to get out of the cycle. That's what they learn and that's what they're taught. That to me made me want to make a difference.
Sure.
To show young girls, to show anybody, you can do something if you put your mind to it. You can change. It's not easy. And I think that this changing to News Channel 20 is a big part of that.
Welcome back to Season 2 of the 217 podcast, presented by Decatur Earth Mover Credit Union and hosted by me, Jess Younghouse. Thanks for listening and thanks for watching. We hope you enjoy it. Welcome back to the 217 podcast. I'm here with Dawn Sterling, new to News Channel 20.
Yeah, quite the change. So the last time we talked, which, that was a totally different situation. So now I'm back here talking with you again.
Yeah.
And even though people wouldn't hear the original one, it was all about WA&D and kind of like my life here, which is still my life here, but I've had a big change since then for sure.
Awesome. So let's just get into a little bit of how you made it to Decatur and a little bit of your background in journalism and news and how that brought you here.
Yeah. So I grew up in Michigan, and it was, I was just really interested in high school. A teacher had kind of gotten me involved in reporting and kind of going around the school, and then he would edit the stuff at home, and then we'd put it on cable access. And I got really interested that way. And then one of my friends actually kind of like lost feeling in his feet, and he ended up being in Detroit's Children's Hospital. Okay. And it's connected to another hospital. Okay. And in between, there was like, food court type deal, like big deal. And there was a Wendy's. And me and all my friends went to go see him while he was in the hospital. And it turned out it was just a weird freak thing. And they said if it ever happened again, it would be considered MS, which is odd for, a 17-year-old boy at that. But I remember driving him home. He's like, man, my feet are freezing cold. Are yours? And I was like, no. And he was losing feeling. And then he had to go to rehab and all that stuff. Anyway, we went to go visit him in Detroit Children's Hospital. He wanted a Frosty. So we took him, we wheeled him down, and it was me and about like 3-4 other people, and we wheeled him down to that Wendy's, and I was waiting in line at that Wendy's, and the person in front of me was a man, and he's like, oh, who are you here for? And he starts talking to me, which, again, when you're 17 and there's, a middle-aged man talking to you, you're like, okay, and I said, well, my friend, he's lost feeling. He's in rehab. And he's like, oh, well, what year are you? And he just started a conversation. I ended up talking to him. And I said, well, I'm going to go to Central Michigan University, and I'm going to go for broadcasting. He's like, really? He said, I'm the news director at Fox 2 Detroit. And I said, really? And he said, yeah, I know that seems unbelievable in this situation. He's like, but I'm here visiting actually a friend who is passing away. And are you sure that's what you want to do? And I said, I'm pretty sure that's what I want to do. And that's why I picked Central, because they had a great program for it. And he said, well, if you are interested and you want to make sure, let me give you my card. I'm more than willing to have you come in and follow reporters around, see what the newsroom's like, visit for days, like ever. So then from that point forward, I skipped like one day every other week of school. And I went there and I shadowed reporters, and I shadowed the assignment desk, and I shadowed producers. I sat in the meetings, kind of sat in the studio and saw what it's all about to make sure that's kind of what I want to do. And boy, the hands-on experience was totally different for broadcast news than, in school and then in journalism as a whole. It's just a whole different beast. So that's how I got into it. And then I went to Central Michigan, spent my 4 years there, honing my skills there and learning all about it and doing internships. And then I went to Binghamton, New York first. Okay. Then I was in Terre Haute, Indiana. Okay. And then I went back to Michigan. So I was in Flint, Saginaw Bay City, which is a tri-market like Decatur, Springfield, Champaign. So it's all considered one. And went there for a couple years, and then Decatur called.
Okay.
And WAND had called and said, hey, we're looking for a main anchor for our 6 and 10 shows at the time. And would you be interested? And I said, well, yeah, I'd like to come see what it's all about. Because at that point I was working weekends in Flint. And my husband, of course, worked the normal 9 to 5 weekdays, right? I mean, not technically, but you know, he worked the normal schedule and Monday through Friday. And so we didn't see each other ever.
Yeah.
And so me working nights and weekends, I mean, there was just no opportunity. We had no days off together, nothing. So we thought, hey, for quality of life, we want to start a family. Let's go see what this is about. And we did. And what a comfortable environment. And the people were so nice. And so we made the trek down here and we have been here ever since. So it has been 19 years. In November of 2023, it was 19 years. So,
and you spent that 19 years at WAND.
I did. So the 19 years at WAND, and things evolved. I started at 6 and 10, and then Michaela Thorpe and Marcus left, and they moved me and Sean to the 5, 6, and 10. Then they added a 4. Then they added a 4:30. So kind of just doing it all for a long time. Then they would hire a co-anchor for me or then take me off certain shows. But mainly I stuck to the evening shows.
Okay. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about how you said that, what was his role? The person you saw at the hospital?
He was the news director.
The news director. So, what a chance. I mean, obviously, meant to be. Is that kind of mentorship still happening today? Would you say?
No, I would say by chance, maybe, but in general, it's a lot of groups. Like there's a lot of different broadcasting groups that are mentoring. So like you can go to, you know, conventions or things like that. And then you find a mentor that way. But for high schoolers, no, I wouldn't think so.
Yeah. That's awesome. It
just was right place, right time.
Yeah.
What are the odds? And he actually ended up being my agent after college because he had not been news director at that point. And so he was my agent for a few years and actually got me to here and all that stuff. And then when I decided to stay here and raise a family here, then but it's just one of those weird things meant to be.
That's awesome. Okay. So tell me a little bit about, I guess, transition from WAND to News Channel 20.
Yep. So after being there for so long, you know, I've been through a lot of managers. I've been through a lot of news directors. I had been through a lot of general managers. And WAND, the people there are great. I love my relationship with Sean. We've worked together for obviously the whole time we were there. A lot of people come in and out of this market because it's a smaller market. So when you talk about that, for those who don't know, it's like Alpena, Michigan's like 200 and something. And that's one of the very small ones. And then New York City's number 1. So obviously the higher you go, the more you get paid. The bigger the city, the more there's to do, all that fun stuff. So a lot of people, the goal is to move up and up and up, especially reporters. So that's why we see a lot of transition in this market. In addition, like I said, my husband and I really like it. The people are really nice, comfortable, very Midwestern, like I'm used to. And then on top of that, we had 2 kids and we're raising our kids here. It's a great place to raise kids. So, as you know. So my transition from WAND, I just kind of felt over the past few years that my time there was coming to a close. And when Stacy used to work at WAND, Stacy Skrzak with News Channel 20 that I'm now co-anchoring with. Her and I did the 4 o'clock together and we had just such a great relationship and became fast friends and we've stayed close ever since. So, as my contract was coming up with WAND, you know, she had said to me, hey, my co-anchor is leaving early unexpectedly. Would you ever consider coming over here? I would love to work with you again. And first off, that is odd in this business that another woman would be a champion for their friend to want them to come sit next to them. And then the other weird part about it is 2 females. So she didn't even know if the corporate would go for that, right? 2 females on the desk. And I said, you know, it's hard because you get comfortable, right? But again, I kind of had this nagging feeling. And I said, kind of just blew it off.
Sure.
I met with the higher ups at WAND, and I felt my time was coming to an end.
Sure.
We did negotiate. I negotiated in good faith. And then I said, you know what, I'm going to go check this out. So I met with the higher ups over at WICS, and I don't know. It just was like, okay, they were for two women. They were for the female perspective. They were about happiness. They were about, listen, let's make you happy to come to work. And we will also in turn make Stacy happy by having you here. So I had some thoughts about it, and I really had to pray on it. And so time moves on, and I just go to church, and I literally gave it to God. I'm like, you need to tell me what to do, because I truly do not know what to do. And I was at church with my son, and it was just he spoke to me very clearly, do not sign that contract at WAND. And I mean, it was just this overwhelming feeling of knowing what's right. Now, at that point, I didn't have a job. I didn't know. So I put my faith in God, and I said, okay, I'm going to listen to you. Later that day, I drove my daughter to volleyball. She plays club volleyball in Shelbyville. Okay. And I took her and some girls from her class who are also on the club teams, and I heard them talk all the way there, and I heard them talk all the way back. And so my daughter is a freshman in high school, and hearing them talk and hearing her be happy and hearing her find her people, and then the girls just talking about their homework and all that stuff, I was like, okay, I need to stay in this area for her. Yeah. Because obviously it was very nice to know I had opportunities outside of Central Illinois. Yeah. I had talked to a lot of different people, a lot of different opportunities, but it just was so right to stay here. Sure. We've made this our home for 20 years, basically. And to move and do all that, my husband has a career, and we really do like it here. I moved my mom here. So this is our home now. So then I started talking after I had left WAND, I started talking with Channel 20, and I was just like, hey, let's see if we can make this work. We don't know. Sure. And it worked out.
Good. So what were some of the unknowns, do you think?
Well, the unknowns obviously is, will I work in the business in this area still? Should I do something totally different? But I knew at that point, God was speaking to me to put my happiness and my worth first. Yeah. It's important as a woman. It's just, you're a mother of 6. You kind of put everybody before yourself. Sure. My husband had transitioned in a job. My son had transitioned schools in 2023. We had a fire at our home. Oh, okay. It was a big year of making sure everybody was where they were supposed to be. Sure. My daughter started high school. Yeah. And it just seemed like I was constantly putting everybody's happiness above mine. Sure. And I didn't want to walk into a place for another certain amount of contract time and not feel my worth and not be happy and not be at my happiness. So happiest. So, when it came down to talking to other stations and other places, it was like, no, I need to do something that's going to make me happy, where I'm going to feel happy. And I think going to a place where I get to sit next to a friend every night, and not that Sean wasn't a friend or isn't a friend, sure, but that I get to be with somebody that I have such a camaraderie with, that is a mother, that is a career woman too, that we get to bounce each other ideas off of each other, not only when it comes to work, but friendship, and husbands and life and kids and all that stuff. It's just wonderful. Yeah. So far, so good.
That's lovely to hear. I love everything that you said. So let's talk about, I want to talk about kind of news and the shifting landscape that we've seen as far as news goes and how people consume it. But you said something that I want to touch on first, like being being in career together with a friend and how it is a little bit uncommon in your industry to have a champion that's another woman and competition and all that stuff. So, what does it feel like to have found that? You talked a little bit about, but I do want to expand on it. And, what would you say to other people in general, women who are working in general, but specifically people that want to get into journalism?
Well, journalism is tough, number one. And I said this, and it still is that, not as many men go into this as they did in the past. And so they're usually high sought after. Being a white woman in journalism, you really have to prove your worth. And I'm not, and that's why the Midwest works for me, and this area works for me because, I just kind of can relate to the people here, and it's a very conservative area. So I was so happy that they were willing to do and take a chance on two women sitting next to each other. And I do think it's important for, like I said, for moms and for women and people with careers and in journalism. It doesn't matter what career you're in. Evaluating. It's easy to be comfortable. It's much harder to be uncomfortable and to change, especially when nothing's really wrong. Does that make sense? Like nothing's was really wrong. It was time. And I'm so glad I took myself out of my comfort zone. And who knows what will happen in the next few years, but I am loving having that camaraderie with her. And Stacey's always been a champion for whoever she cares about and loves. It doesn't matter who it is. But I just really think that for her to say, hey, I love you enough that I want you to come over here as a competition. Let's have some fun. Let's do this. And you can already tell, yesterday was our first day on air together. You can already tell. I mean, it's just instant. We could finish each other's sentences. I mean, not that we do, but it's great. It just really is great. And then, it's a female, I'm a female, she's a female. The meteorologist there is a female. The news director is a female. The assistant news director is a female. The executive producer is a female. So, they know a woman's worth. And I just think it's just important for news in general. I truly love that, like, CBS has Nora O'Donnell, and she's their head female anchor and for their nightly news program. And I mean, it's not like everybody loves Lester Holt. Right. And that's okay too. But I like that you can have differences. Right. And a female does bring a little different perspective when it comes to some stories.
Absolutely. So let's talk about how news has changed. So you've been here for 19 years, but how long have you been in news as a whole?
Oh, over 25 years.
Okay. Over 25 years. So, in that 25 years, how has news shifted, not just how we report or how you report news, but how people consume has obviously changed. What people want to consume has changed. So just talk to me a little bit about that, how that's evolved.
It is evolved, and it's still evolving. And I don't think it is done evolving. And I mean, think about way back, when I was watching news as a kid, the reason I liked news, it was always on in the background. At my grandparents' house, it was just always on, and it was just, his name was Bill Bonds in Detroit, and he was just in the background at all times. And, I was interested in news and current events and things like that and what's going on. And when I got into it, I mean, besides the fact that technology has changed. So that's first and foremost. Going from splicing actual tape together to, then digital recordings. And then you go, everything is digitized. People consume news instantly now. So there is no waiting in my mind. So news used to be appointment viewing. If you wanted to know what was happening locally where you were at, which is why I love local news, because you can get the national and international news now anywhere
Right.
at any time. You
Right.
open up your phone, it pops up, right? What is the big story happening across the globe is popping up, whether it be here or, in the Middle East.
Sure.
It's all happening. So it's very instant. So there's no waiting.
Okay.
Now, older generations still sit down and watch the news. A lot of people, a lot of even moms that are my age or your age, they
Sure.
will have it on in the background to know what's going on locally for weather, all of that. It's very, local news is very important because you can't get that everywhere.
Right.
But people are consuming it differently. They are opening up their phones for it. It is an on-demand situation now.
Sure.
So it is changing and evolving. And if you look at the industry as a whole, obviously they're paring down when it comes to news stations, but they're expected to do more and more and more coverage.
Sure.
Especially when it comes to local. So it's kind of, in my mind, finding that balance and getting on that technology where people can consume you instantly.
Sure.
There's no waiting anymore. I mean, if you look at, even Twitter or Facebook, which X, and you just, you can see what's trending even locally.
Right.
So like, if there's a street blocked off in Decatur, about it.
We can find it.
Right.
Yeah.
You know about it. As soon as you open up your Facebook, something's going on here. Even when you talk about like something like the cold weather, you can find that instantly. So it's changed and evolved. It's local news is still very, very relevant. It's just the way people are consuming it.
Sure. How does the way news, I feel like news is just, it's a polarizing thing, right?
Very divisive.
Yeah. So, do you feel like that has trickled down into local?
Absolutely.
And how do you, is that the wave that we're riding?
I don't know if it's a wave or if it's here to stay.
Right.
It really truly did start about 2016, about the not trusting, the news. And truly, when you have anybody who can have a microphone and anybody has a phone and a camera in their hand and can put anything up on the internet that they want, it's hard to know what's real and what's not. The part about journalism, the part about local news that is so important is there are journalistic ethics and standards that we have to go by. I cannot just say, people on Facebook are saying that there's, a SWAT team at the corner of El Dorado in Maine, and that they're flying into a home or the gas station there. I cannot do that. I have to get it confirmed. I have to give a little more background. I have to have it from more than one source. There's checks and balances there.
Sure.
We are supposed to be, and I think for the most part, we are non-bias, right? So I have opinions about stuff, but I don't throw them out there. That's not my job. My job is to give you both sides of the story and make you decide. You see, like when it comes to, one of the things we're talking about is just the fact that to have marijuana dispensaries and stuff in Decatur, that's a huge issue. There are two sides to that story.
Sure.
There are two different, everybody feels one way or another about it. Our job is to, we know that they will not allow it here. And we can give other people's opinions about it. This is what this side is saying. This is why this side is saying no. This is why this side says we should. And let you decide as a consumer. And that is important when it comes down to when you go to vote locally.
Sure.
Right? So these issues are in your hometown.
How do you think that as a broadcaster, does it hurt you or help you to expand your growth, have more opportunities to I don't know if playing it safe is the right word, but to follow the rules? Or is it helpful to be a little bit more opinionated or to push those boundaries a little bit?
So when it comes to that, to me, those people, they are commentators. Okay, so there's a difference.
Sure,
I mean,
absolutely.
when you talk to somebody like a Rush Limbaugh or, those type of people, they can have their opinion because they are commentators. And
Yeah.
I think that's where the waters get muddied, right? So they are on like an MSNBC
Sure.
or whatever. And
a news outlet
right.
that
And they
we
do,
associate as
yes,
a news outlet.
but then that's a 24-hour news program.
Yeah.
And people get a little confused. It's like, oh, well, he's giving his opinion. What's our local news opinion? That's not our job.
Right. Yep.
Our job is to present what's happening locally, important information that you need to know, and to inform you. And that is our job as journalists. And ethically, if you stick to that, you're knowledgeable, you're believable, you're not going to get caught up in some big scandal,
Right.
or say something so stupid.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, honestly, it's just not right. Our job is to come into your homes and give you information about what's happening locally. Now, if you want to go be a commentator, more power to you. And you have every opportunity to do that because now you have a camera. You can upload it to YouTube. You can, have a podcast.
Sure. Is that something you ever would consider?
Absolutely. But I don't think it would be my opinion. It would be, news can only give you, for a half an hour program,
So much time.
a minute and a half of on a story. But people have a lot more to say, and I would love to hear what people have to say.
Sure.
I'm great at listening and interviewing. I'm not so great on this side, right?
Yeah.
Because I have never been able to, nor do I want to tell my opinion because it's just not how I was brought up in the business.
Sure.
So
who is somebody that we talked about a little bit about mentorship earlier and just getting into the business, but who is a broadcaster that you've always looked up to that you've tried to kind of emulate or take tips from or things like that?
Barbara Walters was, of course,
Sure.
I mean, she was on all the time, but truly it's just as a whole, don't want to emulate. The whole part of being successful is being happy and, being able to be yourself. It's so funny because everybody's like, oh, do I really know her when I see her come in my living room? But yeah, what you get is me.
Yeah.
Obviously, if I'm telling a hard news story, I'm not going to be able to be laughing and I bring you, but there are some stories that get to me when we talk about kids with cancer or, these local I mean, it's just, it's heartbreaking. And you do form relationships with people in the community. And I'm a huge champion for this area. I've sat on boards. I have been on the Baby Talk board. I've been on the Catholic Charities board. I helped form the first dog park. I have a lot of interests. And those are my ways of giving back.
Sure.
And showing that I am a real person and I do care about things. Right. And I'm not for everybody.
Sure.
That's another thing that's really important. When it comes to, that's why you have news channels and you have different
choices.
Yeah. If you don't like someone, you don't have to watch them. If you do like someone and you trust someone, that's great.
Sure.
And the other thing is we're not AI yet. We're not robots, right? So we do stumble a little bit or make mistakes sometimes. And this area has just been always very nice and forgiving to me and lovely. And also just fans of mine because they see that I am a real person and that I do give back. I do have a family and, I like it here. And I think that's what a lot of people like about me is I'm genuine when it comes to this area.
You see people out and about. We've talked about this before. I do appreciate that what you see is what you get with you. And I've never felt like you're pretending to be somebody you're not. Is it a hard lesson to learn? To be yourself?
The business is just harsh in general. And we just talked about this yesterday, actually. So we were talking about, Stacey and I tend to wear the same things. We've even worn the same outfit at different stations, right? So, because we've been friends. And so somebody said, oh my gosh, you're on the same dress tonight in the same color or same dress, different color. So it's just when it comes to a female in this business, people notice and feel it's okay to say stuff. But they were saying that a man had worn the same suit, the same shirt color and the same tie for 2 weeks straight, and not one person said something. But you see, a lump or a bump or the same dresses over and over and over again, and you notice on a woman. And people, we talked about this before, the keyboard warriors, now with the fact that you can have access to your favorite people or, youth, and the people do feel they know me. And that is a wonderful, wonderful thing. But that also feels that gives them the right to say, you look like crap today. Did you get enough sleep?
You're not looking your best,
Have you
girl.
gained weight? Are you pregnant? Oh, Lord.
Yeah.
I mean,
sure.
So I've heard it all. And like I said, not everybody, I'm not for everybody.
Sure. So News Channel 20 films in Springfield.
That's where their studios are.
That's where the studio is. So do you intend to stay in the area?
Yeah, for sure.
In the area as in Decatur.
Yeah. So for the immediate future, there are no plans to move.
Yeah.
That is something that, the Herald and Review asked me to. My kids go to school here. My daughter is in high school here. And we just really like the area.
Sure.
Now, whether I'm driving there, that is a thing. But it's not as far as you think.
Sure.
And so we will see where it goes. But for right now, I own a house.
Yeah.
We are very ingrained in this community, and that's good.
Where do you want your future to take you in news or otherwise? You've made this big change and you've made this big transition, but things are always going to be changing and evolving. And where do you see yourself in another 20 years?
In another 20 years, I'd be interested to see where local news is. And again, I truly believe in my heart of hearts that local news will always be important because where are you going to get this information where you live?
Sure.
It's easy to get the information and live in a big city and, have all the information coming to that big city. But when you live in these small rural areas, the local news is important. The local weather is important. The local economy is important. How people are moving in and out is important. Who you vote for is important.
Sure.
And who's running for these positions is important. Holding people accountable for government locally is important.
Sure.
Otherwise, if this stuff goes unchecked, so there's always going to be journalism at the local level.
Sure.
It's just a matter of how people are going to consume it.
What's been one of your most impactful stories that you've been a part of telling?
Well, I've told a lot of different stories. The ones that stick with me the most, of course, after I became a mother, were the abuse stories of children. It's hard for me to fathom. I'm not saying I'm the most patient mother in the world, and I'm not saying I could ever have 6 kids like you do. I mean, everybody has their way. But when I see children being hurt, and it's a pattern, meaning, usually those people have been hurt in their lives, it just breaks my heart. I wish one of the most impactful or things that had kind of dawned on me when I had been here a few years is we used to do this I love to read thing. And we would go into schools. And we had just done a story on a guy who had been out drinking, kind of JD, I can't remember the name of it. But he had hit an officer rushing to the scene.
Okay.
And the officer had died in the crash. And he, of course, went to prison for it. And I can't even remember his name. But we went into the schools, and the kid we were reading to had asked Sean and I, hey, do you know my dad? And do you know if he's okay? And it was this guy who was in prison. And I said, well, I'm sure your dad's okay. He had the same name.
Sure.
He was a junior. I said, I'm sure your dad's okay. And it's fine. And then I would say 4 years went by. So he was probably, 14, 15 at a time. And this 14-year-old had shot somebody in an alley. And we knew the name, but we couldn't release the name because he was a minor. And I called up one of my officer friends and I said, I'm hearing the name of this kid, and if I'm reading it correctly, is it the same kid as this dad? And he said, yes. And I said, he was such a little boy that seemed so concerned and so, and he said, it's so hard for people to get out of the cycle. That's what they learn and that's what they're taught. And that's what they see. So it's just really, really hard. And that to me made me want to make a difference.
Sure.
To show young girls, to show anybody, you can do something if you put your mind to it. You can change. It's not easy. And I think that this changing to News Channel 20 is a big part of that. I kind of had put that aside, like I said, for my family and for my kids and for the area and kind of getting all caught up in it. And then I was like, wait a minute, I need to be happy too.
Sure.
And I need to break. If I'm not at my best all the time, how can I be the best for everybody else? Right? So, you know, that is what some people say, you notice, you know, you're not looking. It's what I've gotten a lot of in the past week and a half. You look happy, right? And that's important.
Yeah. And do you realize at WAND, do you realize that you're in an environment where you're not happy or where you feel so tense or where, you know, whatever it is that's weighing on you when you're still in it, do you even realize?
No, you really don't. But then there comes a point where, and it's not a WAND thing. I think for a lot of it, it was the news, right? So consuming that, I not only read all the local, what's going on, and the affidavits and the police reports and this and that. I also have all that national and international heavy coming on you. And every day that wears on you in and out. My time off, I had about 6 weeks off. I truly enjoyed my family. I truly enjoyed the fun things to do around the area. I went to the Christmas walk. I got to take my son to hockey practice. I got to drive to volleyball. I got to do the things that if you wanted to stick your head in the sand, you could. And it was a nice weight lifted off that I didn't have to pay so close attention.
Sure.
So a lot of people say to me, I don't even watch the news anymore because it's just so dark. It's so sad. It's so, and they're right. My goal and something I've noticed at News Channel 20 is telling the better stories.
Sure.
So what a story that I'm working on actually tonight that will air tonight, which obviously this will podcast will add later, but it's about female empowerment and how women listen to their intuition or listen to God. And then they take their talents and their gifts and they show them to the world. Because truly, that's a story in itself.
Yes, that's stories that need to be told. What's one of the happiest stories you've shared on the news?
Oh my gosh, there is quite a few over the years. But I will say this story tonight is about a woman who was a mother of 6, had worked for a company for 18 years in payroll and HR. And she woke up one morning and she said, God whispered in my ear, I was to help the homeless. And I knew really nothing of homeless. I didn't know where to find them. I mean, yes, they were there, a part of the background of my life, just like everybody else's, but I didn't ever have any consideration on how to help them. And she said, I went to church that day and I told my, fellow churchgoers, and they looked at me like I was crazy. And they're like, well, what are you going to do? She said, I just said, this is what I'm told to do and I'm going to do it. And then she ended up retiring early, and she does this full time, and she has done this full time on her own. She doesn't have red tape of federal grants or local grants for that matter, or local government support. So she can do what really makes a difference, right? In these people's lives. And it's all evolved. And she said, I've just kind of let God work through me and tell me and what path to follow. And my goal is to help these people who are on the streets.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What's something you want people to know? What's something you want to share? What's something that you want people to know about you? What
I want people to know about me is that, news, you can consume it a lot of different ways. And you have to find what you like, right? And when it comes to this area, is such a vast market. We talked about how, you know, Alpena is like 200 and then New York City is, you know, number one. When it comes to this area, we're a middle market. So we're like 80 something and it plays a little smaller and it's rural. And it's all one. So everybody's like, oh, you're not reporting Decatur news, or you're not reporting Springfield news, or you're not reporting Champaign news. We kind of have to hit it all. And so we just do the big stories of the day from the area because the area is so vast. And agriculture is a huge part of this area. And it's very important to those people who are in it. And there are so many people who have connections to agriculture. I mean, think about Earth Mover Credit Union, you know, is in a way is agriculture with you know, mining and stuff. So it's just, there's a lot of connections to agriculture here. And there's a way of life here that is really awesome. And I think that people should be proud to be from this area, right? You know, they say the Decatur haters, and I don't think that's necessarily true. Most people that I've met here that are from here have moved away and then come back. There's something about the area that is very intriguing and keeps you here.
What's your favorite thing about Decatur?
My favorite thing about Decatur is that I get to run into people. I truly do. I know that people say, oh, you can always say hi to me when I'm out. And I always say that, but you can. And you can stop me, and you may see I have on no makeup and I came from the gym, but you can stop me. You can say hi to me. You can give me your story idea. You can just say, oh, I remember this one time when I saw you. It's just friendly. And that's what I like. And honestly, it's a nice reprieve from being all that heavy news that we talked about. It's nice to run out to people, you know, and run into people and then have them be friendly.
I think consistently I've heard that people just like the hominess of running into people, you know, and knowing who to call when you need something or you want to get involved, and knowing the person that can make that connection for you. We hear that repeatedly. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Gosh, I don't know. So it's just like, it was a year, 2023 was a really tough year for me and my family. And I think that as hard as it was, it truly makes you take stock and look, like I said, I had to say, I'm giving it to you because I truly don't know what to do. This year has been so difficult, but it really helped my family grow and become much, much closer. And again, I have my mom here. This is an area which I do love. And it was hard to possibly consider going elsewhere. So I'm so glad it worked out.
I am too. I love that. I love that for you and your family, but I love that for our area, that they can still get their fill of dawn.
Thank you.
So I'm glad you found a home right now in News Channel 20 and you're staying here in the area.
Yes.
All right. Thank you for joining us. And we look forward to seeing what you accomplish.
Thank you.
That was good. Thanks for listening and thanks for watching. Make sure to like and follow Decatur Earth Mover Credit Union on our social channels for more content.